Hello everybody, I'm not trying to waste your time, so here's the synopsis real quick. I league started with Rage Cleave Berserker in Affliction League, and it not only met my expectations, but pretty much blew past them in every aspect. Rage Cleave is easy to level, easy to gear, and easy to play. First, make your choice of flavor. Do you want maximum speed and damage, but with slightly lower survivability? Cool, go Berserker. Or do you want higher survivability at the cost of speed and damage? Cool, go Slayer. Before I get into the details, here are the Path of buildings for those of you who know what you're looking at. And keep in mind that both builds have completely ethical configs. No quality gems, no temporary buffs. Looking at you, Molten Shell, Berserk, and Immortal Call. No flasks, not maximum level, only basic stats on gear, 2 mod jewels, and a single unique that costs 3 Chaos Orbs max. So, starting with the Berserker, and what I recommend you choose to play, we're sitting at around 2.6 million Shaper DPS with 10.8k Fizz max hit and around 23k Elemental. Oh, and if we swap in another unique that'll cost around 30 Chaos on day 1 or day 2 of League Start, which is pretty achievable for most players, we then go up to 4 million DPS instead. That's 4 million Shaper DPS on essentially day 2 solo self-found gear. Oh, and have you noticed the footage? Whoa, Rage Cleave, baby! Yeah, that area is with literally 0 scaling. 0. Just the area baked into the skill gem itself. Now, the only downside to choosing Berserker over Slayer is, unfortunately, the massive degen from Rite of Ruin. You'll have 100 max rage, 120 with Bear's Girdle, which means that while you are in combat, aka not losing rage, you'll constantly be draining for 10% of your life per second. 10% is a pretty hefty amount. That's like 2.5 blood rages activated simultaneously. Thankfully, we have our workarounds for such massive degen. A little bit of regen, Enduring Cry, and most importantly, a butt ton of Life Leech. But before I get into the details, let me just show you the Slayer PoB, because if that degen does sound too nasty to you, regardless of any potential solutions, you should probably just go to Slayer and avoid the hassle. For Slayer, again, with a purely ethical config, we're looking at just over 1.9 million Shaper DPS with 8.3k Fizz max hit and 21k Ellie. And again, if we swap in the Bear's Girdle, the DPS goes up to 2.5 mil. So with Slayer, you have about as much DPS with Bear's Girdle as the Berserker does without. But the main distinction is, of course, instead of constantly draining HP, you are constantly gaining it with Slayer thanks to Overleech. 3.5k per second to be precise. Meaning that if you're okay with doing less damage and having less speed with the upside of not having to deal with your HP constantly sloshing up and down, Slayer is your boy. But, and as I said earlier, I highly recommend that you go with the Berserker. Don't be a baby. Alright, that's it for the synopsis. POBs are in the link below. If you have any questions or need a bit of help leveling and gearing, take a peep at the notes tab where I've written up pretty much every major thing that I could think of with this build. Leveling skills, ascendancy order, priority list for spending your first few chaos, and a few big ticket upgrades to look out for. Now, let's get into the details of, how to actually play the build. The good thing is that basically all you have to do is spam cleave. The name of the game is to get to max rage as efficiently as possible, because as you generate rage, you not only attack faster thanks to its inherent effects, 15% attack speed per 10 rage on Berserker, but you also get massively increased cleave radius. And I do mean massively. Cleave's damage itself is more than enough to clear any trash mobs in the blink of an eye, and once you do find any tankier foes like a map boss or a real map boss, drop your totems and hit Rage Vortex. Rage Vortex on a 4 link actually ends up doing around 2/3 of the damage of Rage Cleave on a 6 link. And this damage grows to a whopping 80% at 20% quality and with Bear's Girdle. On a 4 link, do not skip over Rage Vortex in your setup. And I know, Woolie, I hate having to press the totem button every 10 seconds. It's super annoying and they die all the time. Yeah, well, welcome to Melee, bucko. But in reality, that's exactly why we take the totem nodes at the bottom of Duelist and snag the mastery for 3 seconds of lingered effect. Just to make it clear, boys, if you see any attack-based build running double ancestral totems and it does not have these nodes and this mastery allocated, you need to then untick one of those totems and toss it out of your setup entirely, because you'll both be constantly moving out of range of your totems, and otherwise, they're just gonna die all of the time. And if they don't die, well, did you really need them in the first place? Anyway, yeah, you're gonna have to get used to pressing both totem buttons and Rage Vortex whenever you counter a tanky foe. Thankfully, it doesn't really take any time to do that, and on top of that, you do not need your totems during general map clearing. I still drop Ancestral Protector down every few seconds while mapping just for that juicy attack speed multiplier quality of life, but it is absolutely not necessary. So, to recap, spam cleave until you find a tanky guy, then drop your totems and hit Rage Vortex, and then continue to spam cleave. Also, I want to make it clear here that should you choose Slayer over Berserker, you have to drop multi-strike on cleave for a different support gem, as you simply will not gain rage fast enough otherwise. How Rage Cleave functions is that if it hits any enemies on the first attack, not on any repeats, you then gain a point of rage, 2 points points at 20% quality, which you should get as fast as possible. Now, the reason why Berserker can afford to use multi-strike and not Slayer is due to the extra rage generation built into the Ascendancy itself. That, plus Rage Cleave, plus the Rage Support Gem is more than enough rage generation to be at max after the initial ramping period. Oh yeah, and that reminds me, the most annoying part of playing the build is the ramping. There's just no way about it. You're gonna have to just get used to, well, there is one way about it. Check the notes tab for details. But for a league start scenario, there is really nothing you can do about having to ramp your rage up every single time you enter a new zone. In my experience, and as you can see from the footage, it takes around 10 seconds after entering a map to finally get to a decent amount of rage. Decent, meaning Cleave has a big enough radius to comfortably hit stuff without thinking about it. And then you'll soon be at maximum rage after you reach that breakpoint. If you think this ramp period is annoying, well, again, welcome to Melee. You just gotta get used to it or save up for a red blade banner and your weapon swap. Those really are your only two options. Also, if you're wondering why I don't run Berserk on the Giga Rage Gen build, it's because of this ramp period. It is far more annoying, and I'm pretty sure just numerically inferior as well, to use Berserk, lose all of your rage, and then have to ramp it back up constantly, compared to just, being at max rage all the time. Alright, with that, I have given you all of the necessary info to have a successful Rage Cleave League start. Again, check out the PoBs in the description below, and be sure to use both the leveling passive trees and use the notes tab for any additional info that you may desire. I will also be league starting this build myself, so check out my stream at twitch.tv/WoolieGaming. Stop by and ask any questions or just see the gameplay for yourself. Thanks for watching.